You see it in the news every day. Conflicts around the globe are totally reshaping our economy, pushing trillions of dollars toward defense. But who's actually benefiting from all this, and who's footing the bill? Let's untangle the really complex and honestly often misunderstood economics of war.
I'm sure you've heard this one before, right? This idea that war is some kind of magic bullet for the economy, that it kickstarts factories, creates jobs, and acts like this huge stimulus package. It's a powerful idea, and it's been around forever. But is it actually true?
Well, the reality is a global war economy on a scale that's just hard to wrap your head around. If we stay on the current track, global defense spending is set to hit nearly $2.9 trillion by 2030. And look, that isn't just a number on a spreadsheet. It's a massive, massive shift of the world's resources.
Okay, so to really get what's happening here, you just have to follow the money. Because when global tensions get this high, there are some very clear, very identifiable financial winners. So who exactly is in this winner's circle?
Now, some of the first names on this list probably won't surprise you. We're talking about the big defense contractors, companies like Lockheed Martin and RTX. Their order books just swell. But it's not just them. You've also got the global energy giants who make a killing from all the chaos in the market. And more, you're seeing aerospace, drone makers, and all the tech companies that build the software and cybersecurity for modern fighting.
And this right here, this is a perfect example of how the market reacts. Back in early 2026, as a conflict was heating up, investor money just poured into defense stocks. The drone maker AeroVironment, their stocks shot up more than 40% in 1 week. And that tells you something really important. It's not just about selling more stuff right now, it's about investors being confident that the fighting is going to continue.
And hey, it's not just about weapons. War creates absolute chaos in energy markets. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, just 5 of the world's biggest oil companies have raked in a mind-boggling $467 billion in profit. I mean, that's a 125% jump from what they were making before the war, and it's directly fueled by the crisis.
Okay, so we've talked about the winners, but of course, that is only half the story. Now we need to look at the other side of the equation. The cost for the countries and the people who are actually living through the fighting. For them, the economic reality is a whole different ballgame, a devastating one.
And the difference between these war zones is just stark. You look at Ukraine, and the economy is barely surviving, and that's only because it's being held up by foreign aid. Then you look at Gaza, and it's just total economic collapse. It wiped out 22 years of progress in just over a year. So yeah, for the people living there, this is not an economic stimulus. It's pure devastation.
So you gotta ask, right? How does a system like this, where some people get rich while others lose everything, how does it keep going? To figure that out, we've got to zoom out and look at what you might call the hidden wiring, the connections between corporate profits and political power. And this mind map, this really lays it all out. You see the red dots? Those are the conflicts. The green ones are the corporations cashing in. And the orange ones? Those are the political players. And all those lines connecting them? That's the flow of money and influence. It's the engine that keeps the whole thing running.
So let's zoom in on just one of those connections. What you're looking at here are campaign donations from defense industry groups to the very senators who are in charge of setting military budgets. Now, to be clear, this is all legal, but what it shows is this powerful feedback loop. The politicians approve budgets that send money to the contractors, and then those contractors turn around and help fund the politicians' campaigns.
And you know, sometimes these financial ties can get really personal. Take this, for example. The president's sons have investments in an Israeli drone company. That very same company has contracts with the Pentagon, and its tech has been used in recent conflicts. It just goes to show how the lines between making policy, making a profit, and, personal gain can get incredibly blurry.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds like some distant, high-level game played by corporations and politicians. But the truth is, this whole system has a very real impact on your life, your wallet, and your future.
So what does this all mean for you? Let's break it down. How does the war economy actually show up in your day-to-day life?
All right, first up, your taxes. When defense budgets keep going up, that's money that can't be spent on other things, right? Like schools, roads, or healthcare. Next, your job. Sure, the system creates good-paying jobs in defense and tech, but it also introduces a ton of risk. A conflict halfway around the world could totally wreck supply chains and lead to layoffs in industries that seem completely unrelated. And finally, the cost of, well, everything. The constant threat of war is already making companies move manufacturing for things like computer chips, and that means you end up paying more for everything, from your car to your phone. You know, there's a quote from our source material that just hits the nail on the head. Your town might gain a new line at the missile plant and lose a decade of upgrades to the local school. And that's the whole trade-off in a nutshell, isn't it? A war economy creates these really concentrated benefits for a few, but it often comes at the expense of those broader, long-term investments that help everybody.
So it all comes back to that central question we started with. What we've seen is that war really does enrich a very specific group of companies and people who are plugged into the system. But the costs, the real price, that's paid by pretty much everyone else, in dollars, in lost opportunities, and of course, in human lives. So it leaves you with this one last thought to chew on. When war is a business, who's really paying the price?